Channels Television. Network Africa, the rallying point for the emergence of a new Africa.
Hello and welcome to Network Africa. I am Adeshewa Josh. This week, Sudanese woman sentenced to death for apostasy who enjoyed barely a day of freedom has been recaptured for a totally different crime. Then, Egypt deals a shocking blow to freedom of speech, jails 3 international journalists to the minimum of 7 years, turning the deaf ear to all international outcry. Fewer eligible voters turn up for Libya's crucial parliamentary elections. Will the votes be enough to unseat the General National Congress? Find out what political analysts are saying.
So for the people of Libya, coming together and say, you know what, we want to go for a proper election. We want to elect our parliamentarians and the process elect a new prime minister. I think the will of the people will be respected.
A barrage of bomb explosions in Kano, Mubi, Adamawa State, and then Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory of Nigeria, even as security operatives and relative agencies step in to manage the situation.
An arrest has been made, and security agencies will be following up with that arrest. The building is currently still an active crime scene, and it has been cordoned off. Investigations have already commenced. The police bomb disposal squad, working in conjunction with other security agencies, are already carrying out investigations.
And finally, Fingerful World Cup predictions from a family with 6 fingers each, rooting for their country at the World Cup. Details after the break. We'll be right back. The week began on an explosive note in Nigeria, even as pandemonium broke out along the Gida-Muritala BUK road in Kano on Monday, when an improvised explosive device was detonated in the School of Hygiene Technology, killing 8 people. About 20 others were critically injured, and 8 vehicles badly damaged in the incident that was said to have been caused by a suicide bomber.
Friends, students, and relatives thronged the Murtala Muhammad Specialist Hospital in Kano. Some are here to identify their dead relatives, while others say they came to donate blood. Also, the Emir of Kano, Muhammad Sanusi II, is here to give support to the victims currently receiving treatment at the hospital. Over 20 students are currently receiving treatment in various wards at the hospital.
All the patients have been receiving free medical care, and as you heard from them, attention has been adequately given to them, and those that are requiring surgery will be taken to theater and surgery operated on there as soon as they are stable and in good condition to tolerate the operations.
Some of the victims are still in shock and can't recall how they ended up in hospital.
I saw the car driving in, so I left the place. But just as I was returning, the explosion went off.
We had just finished praying and wanted to go see our provost when the bomb exploded. Some people even thought we were dead.
Journalists are not allowed into the various wards, while desperate relatives have to peer through the windows to see if their relatives are among the bomb blast victims. In the meantime, the Emir of Kano, Muhammad Sanusi II, has condemned the attack and prayed for the quick recovery of the victims.
We condemn this act of terrorism that is seeking to destroy our country. We pray to God to end this act for us. We pray to God to forgive us, heal the injured, and accept the souls of the departed.
And just 2 days after the Kano bomb explosion, another bomb went off at Kasonwa Kuturu, a market in Mubi, Adamawa State, northeast Nigeria. The news agency of Nigeria quotes the Adamawa Commissioner of Police, John Abakasanga, as saying the explosion targeted a police patrol team. However, there were no casualties. Hours later, a densely populated plaza in the nation's capital, Abuja, was bombed, leaving scores of people dead and many injured.
It's another day of sorrow, tears and blood in the nation's capital as the popular Emma Plaza in Wuse 2 area was hit by an improvised explosive device detonated in front of the ever-busy complex. With vehicles burning and sympathizers standing by, security officials and emergency workers battled to put off burning vehicles and evacuate bodies of dead victims. Some eyewitnesses, including the businessman who lost his driver to the blast, narrate the ordeal.
I came to photocopy a document here where the driver parked and I was in. We pray in this mosque. We prayed together. He waited for me. I said, let's go. He waited for me. I was in the complex photocopying my document. I saw the ground is shaking.
I was about driving into Park and Shop, preparation for the Nigerian match, to buy drinks and all that. Then we had a big thought. And then we saw smoke in the air, and then that was it. And people started running away from the point of impact. And in about less than 10 minutes, about 7 minutes, you had the response team on ground. They started coming. Of course, they all did not come at the same time, but the response time was fantastic.
We saw the dead bodies on the floor. There are some inside the car. The taxi drivers, they were inside the car, burning seriously.
Spokesman for the police announced casualty figures, while the minister in charge of the Federal Capital Territory promised new security measures in public places.
It is also heartwarming to know that an arrest has been made and security agencies will be following up with that arrest. The building is currently is still an active crime scene and it has been cordoned off. Investigations have already commenced. The police bomb disposal squad, working in conjunction with other security agencies, are already carrying out investigations. We have equally taken measures to secure the critical infrastructure here, the shops, the building, and all the goods that are herein. And we are assuring the traders and members of the public that we will put adequate security measures in place to ensure there is no pilfering or looting of any of the property here.
If there had not been some very frantic measures being done by the police, the SSS, and the military, the bombers maybe would have been inside the market area. And we are happy that we saw it is outside. But unfortunately, the softest targets were reached from the information I'm getting. Some traders, some hawkers, people that are selling outside the market, outside the shopping mall are affected. We commiserate with them. We are going to visit the hospitals now and see what is happening. But certainly, ours is to say that our security protocol that is being established to make sure that some minimal security infrastructure are being provided in all our soft or public areas are enforced.
Although the site of the blast has been cordoned by security agencies, members of the public have been advised to stay away from the area and be security conscious in public places.
Remember the Sudanese woman, Mariam Ibrahim, who was sentenced to death for apostasy a couple of weeks ago and also released on Monday following international outcry condemning the Sudanese court judgment? Well, Mariam Ibrahim has been reportedly rearrested for allegedly trying to leave the country with fake documents. She and her family had planned to travel to the United States. Meanwhile, according to the Voice of America, the Sudanese government on Tuesday had denied reports that Mariam and her family were rearrested. Egypt's judiciary has dealt a shocking blow to the principle of free speech after 3 journalists for Al Jazeera English were sentenced to between 7 and 10 years in jail on charges of aiding terrorists and endangering national security. The former BBC correspondent Peter Gresti from Australia and the ex-CNN journalist Mohammed Fahmy and local producer Baha Mohammed were jailed for 7 and 10 years respectively. 4 students and activists indicted in the case were also sentenced to 7 years. The judge also handed 10-year sentences to the British journalists Sue Totten and Dominic, who were not in Egypt but were tried in absentia. The courtroom, packed with journalists, diplomats and relatives, erupted at the verdict, which came despite what independent observers said was a complete lack of evidence. Meanwhile, an emergency meeting was held at the United Nations headquarters in New York on Wednesday to address the plight of the journalists. Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott has also been clamoring for the release of Pt1. In the meantime, Egypt President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has promised not to interfere with the decisions of the judiciary.
Australia summoned a senior Egyptian diplomat on Tuesday to protest against the sentencing of an Australian reporter, one of the 3 Al Jazeera journalists, jailed for 7 years by an Egyptian judge. The 3 journalists, including Australian Peter Grest, all denied charges of working with the now-banned Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. A spokeswoman for Foreign Minister Julie Bishop says the Egyptian ambassador was currently in Cairo. Egyptian Charge d'Affaires Sheriff Abdelaziz Badel Hussein was summoned to the Department of Foreign Affairs in Canberra so that Australia could further express its disappointment. Despite the growing outcry, Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott struck a cautious tone, somewhat softening his government's furious initial reaction.
Well, what we don't want to do is engage in unhelpful megaphone diplomacy, because that won't do Peter Grester any good. It won't do his 2 Al Jazeera colleagues any good. What we want to do is to talk calmly and patiently and reasonably to the Egyptian government. We want what's best for the long-term interests of Egypt, as well as what's best for Peter Grester and his colleagues.
The sentence has caused outcry in Australia, with at least one senior politician going so far as to raise the possibility of levelling sanctions against Egypt's government, something Abbott's government has so far ruled out.
We're also taking steps to lodge a formal diplomatic level request of the President that he intervene in the proceedings at this stage. We have been informed that the President cannot consider a plea of clemency or a pardon until such time as all of the legal proceedings have been concluded, and that includes an appeal, and the Grester family are currently considering whether or not to appeal.
Cairo defended the journalist's convictions and rejected the widespread condemnation as interference in its internal affairs.
Coming up on Network Africa. Voting has ended in Libya's low-turnout parliamentary polls. Will this be the turning point for Libya's 3-year leadership drought? I spoke to a political analyst, Olabode Oseni. He believes Libyans are moving in the right direction against all odds. We'll be right back.